Hi everyone, it's Plastic EP here from Melbourne, Australia, and I want you to give a real warm welcome to Kevin Jeffries, son of Dean Jeffries, the famous designer of the Monkey Mobile and other famous cars. Welcome, Kevin, to our show. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
It's been a pleasure, man. Once we got you on, we're on. Now, I just want to ask you what it was like growing up around your dad's shop, right? While he was building the Monkey Mobile. Did you know he was doing it for TV? Just start from there and tell me the story.
Sure. Well, I want to tell the viewers out there that I was a really young, snot-nosed, blonde-haired kid hanging around the shop, and I really didn't know what was going on as a young kid. All I knew is I had a lot of what my dad would call really bitchin' cars around the house and around the shop. And so as a young kid, I had the Monkey Mobile for my birthday parties. I had the Black Beauty from the Green Hornet for my birthday parties. And so I'd come around the shop and he'd be building all these different cars for movies and TVs and things like that. And I was so young, it just didn't mean that much to me. But, here at the shop, you'd have Mike Nesbitt, you'd have Davy Jones around the shop. And it was just, well, who are they, Dad? And then you'd learn later on that these are really cool guys who, were part of the Monkees, obviously. So it was really cool to be a part of it. I just wish I was a little bit older. I was probably about 8 or 9 years old, I would guess, at the time. Um, and then as I got older, I started to realize just how important it was as I spent more time with my dad. So it was really cool. It was really cool.
Kevin, here's a photo. Have a look to bring back memories. This one's my fave. Look at that. You're in the
Yeah.
Monkey Mobile. Where are you? Outside your house.
We're actually at my grandparents' house in Downey, California. Not that far, probably 35 minutes from the shop, 30 minutes from the shop. And my dad would just bring the cars home every now and then. And so we'd go out and hang around the cars, and all the neighbors would come out and look at them. And it was really cool. Now, the backstory on that location, like I said, it was my grandparents, the Maxon family. Well, my dad and my grandfather, Darwin Maxon, were partners in racing sprint cars and Indy cars also. So my dad had a whole other side of his operation, which was racing cars as well.
He was a pioneer. I can't imagine what it was like where everyone's customizing cars, right? And it's in the 60s, and all these celebrities, they find out about your dad and they roll up to the shop and they say, "Can you customize my car? Or can you build a car?" It's like a different world back then, wasn't it?
It really was, and it continued on that way for a very long time. Even after he really kind of went into retirement, he was still getting phone calls from people around the world wanting to have their cars customized by him. Well, by then he was well into retirement. He was just kind of hanging out at the shop just to mess around with his GT40 that he had at the time. And then he would just spend time meeting with people and talking and signing autographs. But they still wanted him to do work on his cars. They still wanted it done.
Have you caught up with any of the monkeys? I'm saying after the Monkey Mobile down the track, did you bump into them by accident or see them?
I did run into Davy Jones. He was out at a concert south of here in Southern California in Temecula Valley. It was a Temecula Valley Balloon and Wine Festival, and Davy Jones was there as part of the entertainment, one of the acts. And I got to talk to Davey for a little bit after he was done. And Davey was kind of surprised. He hadn't seen or heard my dad in a long time. And here I am, this kid out of the blue coming up saying, "Hey, I'm so-and-so's son." And he obviously knew my dad and the full backstory, but it was kind of a surprise.
But he recognized you. Did he recognize you or didn't really?
He didn't recognize me. He recognized the Dean Jeffries name.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I was not that important in Hollywood, let me tell you.
Okay, but let me tell you now, your dad used to race cars in the desert, yeah, and Mike used to do the same thing?
Right. He and Mike Nesbitt were riding buddies. My dad used to make these dune buggies called Coyotes. And Mike Nesbitt was one of his racing partners when they would do the Baja races and others. And my dad told me a story. If you got time, if you want to hear the story.
I got plenty of time.
So they were racing out across the back deserts, and it was a very long race. And I'm trying to remember how my dad told me the story. It was a really long race, and the coyote buggy that they were racing in, it broke down out in the middle of nowhere, and so they had to figure out how they're going to get it back. So after a while, I think my dad said it was a helicopter showed up, picked up Mike Nesmith, took him back, but left my dad there with the dune buggy. So my dad was not happy about being left out there in the middle of nowhere. But I guess Mike had to get back someplace, and so when you're that well known, you just get a helicopter.
Oh, well, what can I say to that? But you know what? I laugh because, what can I say to that story? Now, is there any other monkey stories to do with the car that you can tell me?
Nothing real specific. I think it was Davey Jones that used to come around the shop a fair too, and just kind of hang out with my dad. They had pictures done together. They were both pretty young at the time. Nothing real specific. They were just, we had guys like Steve McQueen come through, Jay Leno would come through. All these movie stars would come through because he was literally a mile or two from most of the movie studios. And they all wanted to come by and see what he was doing at his shop, what kind of car he was customizing today, what was he painting today. And it was just, people coming in and out all the time.
Did he have a coffee machine?
Do I have a coffee machine?
No, did he have a coffee machine at the shop for the celebrity?
Let me think. I believe I think so. I mean, I know he had a refrigerator with a lot of beer in it.
That's good. That's probably what it was. Now, let me ask you, I think I've seen a photo of Mike Nesmith outside your dad's shop with one of the minis. He bought a special mini in the UK, and it's a brown one. Do you remember that mini coming to your shop?
Oh, I don't recall that one. No, I sure don't. I don't.
Okay, it was a customized mini that he bought.
Okay, yeah, no, I don't recall that one. There was a lot of pictures when Mike would come by the shop and my dad would be working on the cars, and I think he actually put Mike to work a couple of times. There was one vehicle, and I apologize, I don't remember what it was on the side of the shop, and they were out there sanding it down. So maybe it was Mike's car for all I know. But Mike was out there right with him, sanding down the side of the car. So, that's what happened at that shop. You just worked on cars.
It's amazing. Now, there's also a lot of celebrity cars. Like, did he do Paul Revere and the Raiders car? Can you go through some of these celebrity cars that he built?
A few of them. The most famous was a James Bond car. It was Sean Connery, and it was the movie Diamonds Are Forever. And it's called the Moon Buggy. And so for folks who watch the Diamonds Are Forever movie, they'll see this big moon rover that sets up real high, cockpit's up high, and it's got arms that come out off to the side. Well, my dad built that from scratch at the shop. I was there as a kid when he was working on it. And it was so challenging to operate the vehicle that when they shipped it out to the desert out near Las Vegas to film the movie, Sean Connery had trouble operating the machine because of its complexity with its arms and pedals and stuff like that. So they had to hire my dad to come out to be Sean Connery's double to operate the moon buggy during the filming of the movie. And then they went into downtown Las Vegas, and my dad was a stuntman at the time. So they wrecked, my dad told me sometime, they wrecked something like 60 Mustang Mach 1s in the filming of that movie in downtown Vegas. So he made cars like that for other James Bond movies. There was just a whole host of them, and I apologize, I can't remember them all right now, but he had done the Manta Ray in the 1963. He did the Manta Ray, which was this really sleek vehicle, one-seater with a kind of a little bubble seat over the back end. That won Best of Show at the National Roadster Show in 1963. That sort of launched his career into motion pictures and TVs. the James Bond movie in the late '70s what really put him in deep into motion picture work. So from there on, it was just car after car after car for all kinds of folks coming in wanting stuff done. And boy, I should have done my homework for you. I could have probably had a long list of cars that he'd done.
Kevin, we'll save that for another time. That's no problem. But what I want to ask you is with the, as I said, he did the Monkey Mobile, and what happens is the Monkey Mobile turned up in Australia in 1968 after the Monkey September concert, and then it disappeared. And I heard rumors that your dad tried to buy the car back. Do you know that?
Well, it's funny. I'd asked my dad because I have a couple of his cars after he passed away, and I've got his '33 Ford, I've got his dune buggy, I got his Manta Ray, and I asked him why he didn't keep a Monkey car or even one of the Green Hornet cars. And he said, I had to. I couldn't afford to keep cars like that because I had to have money to build the next cars. And so it was an issue of finances. He really didn't start making good money building those kinds of cars until after the James Bond movie, until Diamonds Are Forever, when he really got more and more into the motion picture work. So he didn't have the opportunity to own the cars. And by the time he did have the money to buy the cars, it was just a project of days past, and he wanted to do something else. So we would go to a lot of car shows together, and we would walk around and look at the cars. And I gotta tell you, and this isn't meant to sound arrogant about my dad or anything. It was very hard to impress my dad with your car being customized because he was a perfectionist and he wanted everything done. He would call it sanitary, meaning 100%. And he was very critical of how well car was done because he held himself to really, really high standards. So
Totally understand.
yeah, it's just the way he was. And he really wasn't interested in keeping cars around that he'd done in the past.
That's all right. That's like an artist that does paintings. If you kept every painting, you'd be a starving artist.
Yes.
So now I've got to ask you, we've got to move on to the Green Hornet because I'm a big fan of the Green Hornet. So please tell me everything you can about the making of that car or whether Kato and the Green Hornet came there, which was, Bruce Lee. Did he ever make an appearance at your shop? Or just let you tell the story?
So now that one, I don't believe he did. I don't think Bruce Lee ever came around the shop. I'm going to look at my wife. Did you ever hear any stories about Bruce Lee? No. Yeah, they were not. They lived fairly close to each other, but I don't think they did. The Green Hornet car was one that probably my dad had to use the most technology he had ever used at that time, because the James Bond cars and a really big vehicle he did was for Damnation Alley, called the Landmaster. That was probably 35, 40 feet long and 12 feet high, and it twisted in the middle, had triangular wheel arrangements on the side. So the Black Beauty was just I'd ask him, why didn't you save one of these for your collection? And I had to have the money for the next project. So all these cars were out there. Now, fortunately, one of the Black Beauties fell into the hands of a gentleman who has restored it with absolute perfection. It's just a gorgeous car now, and he's done a really good job of preserving it and maintaining it. And I don't know that my dad would have given it that level of care and maintenance like some of these collectors are doing with the Monkey cars and the Black Beauty. So it was just another big project at his shop. When his shop was little, my dad went through 3 shops, 2 in downtown Hollywood and one kind of North Hollywood. And my dad built both of them at the North Hollywood shop on Cahuenga, and they were just one stall kind of wide. I mean, maybe 2 stalls wide at the Cahuenga shop, and they did everything in that one little shop. It wasn't until he became sort of business partners with my grandfather that he was able to add on to his shop and be able to build bigger and more projects.
I
Probably
understand.
more than you wanted to know.
But Kevin, I got to tell you, see, this is why at the time, who knew that your dad is building cars that are iconic, that are pop culture, that are with every child out there? Like the Monkey Mobile, you'd have got no idea how many collectors and how the marketing for the Monkey Mobile as toys is all over the world, and it continues. And there's so many Facebook groups that talk about the Monkey Mobile every single day. I mean, he's left a big legacy to the world, and that's what you probably know that.
Yeah, a gentleman by the name of Tom Cotter, Cotter, Tom Cotter. He wrote a book about my dad um, that really encompassed his life from start to near the end. That covered a whole bunch of the vehicles, the personal challenges he went through, the physical injuries as a stuntman, just all of life's challenges that a man could face in the industry of custom cars and stunt work. And when that book got published and went international, uh, my dad's recognition worldwide went through the roof. I mean, it was a really big life changer for him. He was well known in the industry, in the motion picture industry, and in the car club industry. But when that book hit, he became sort of a household name in a lot of those niches around the world, and he was getting requests for interviews, and just a lot of different things happened after that book got published. A lot more car shows they wanted him at. They wanted him to speak. Just it really was a life-changing event for him.
But see, this is what happens when someone does something that's great. It's not until down the track that they recognize how great it is, and then people catch up with it. This is why we're doing the interview now. You're telling the story. Now, the great thing is, in 10 years' time, or 20 years' time, or 30 years' time, they'll be watching this to hear your story about your dad. And that's what it is.
Well, and that may be true. My wife and I, we have a son whose name is Garrett Dean Jeffries as well, and our son spent time with his grandfather Dean Jeffries there at the Hollywood shop in his house in Studio City, and so even our son got to know Dean Jeffries even more, and some of his life's accomplishments and his works and stuff like that. So it's being passed down from one generation to the other as to his accomplishments and his unbelievable skills to create cars literally from the ground up and just make beautiful cars. And so it's a nice legacy to pass on. I can tell you, in these hands, there's not a bit of DNA that allows me to build cars like my dad did. I don't have it. It's a once in a lifetime skill set that he had that very few others had.
Kevin, all I want to say is I want to thank you so much for our first interview. And it's been mind blowing for me because I'm a big Monkeys fan, and to me, the Monkey Mobile, the models are all over my house. They really are. And to talk to the son of Dean Jeffries, you're Kevin, and you know what, Kevin? Thank you so much for telling your story, and I can't wait for another installment. Thank you again.
Very good. Now, thank you very much for having me. I always enjoy sharing these stories with folks and getting out there, doing some car shows every now and then with his Manta Ray. I wish I could have bought a Monkey Mobile. I would have put it on tour, but those are really high priced right now. So thank you again for having me on with you.
It's been a pleasure. See you again, Kevin. Thank you kindly. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.